wanted to follow up from the last lesson I made. It's getting a little bit late here, and I was making spaghetti, put on my house coat, getting ready for a beautiful Saturday night, just relaxing here. But in terms of making the lesson digestible so that you can understand what I'm talking about, I wanted to provide examples in terms of how to put this into practical use in your own life. So one of the examples I was thinking about was in a previous relationship. I had a spouse that was heavily addicted to drugs, like very hard drugs, crack cocaine, meth, you name it. In my contracted state, I projected a lot of anger and hatred and condemnation onto that individual. Instead of seeing them in their truly innocent state, seeing that what they were doing was a manifestation of pain, of insecurity, of a wound, of not feeling worthy, I misjudged them. I went into a state where I became the judge and jury. And what that precipitated within myself was a lot of very nasty behavior, a lot of very unloving. The absolute opposite of unconditional love was what I was emanating. And the more that I cycled through that energy of frustration and anger and bitterness and disappointment and projected it at that other individual and also held that energy inside myself, I started to unravel in a way that was very, very perceptible to me. And what ended up transpiring in terms of my own world was that I started to create a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety within myself. Now, for sure, there's real life examples where, or a real life situation where the actions of that person caused me to be very anxious, caused me to be depressed, I was hurt. But the way that I integrated the interaction was I held all of that inside of me. Instead of letting go and letting God, I also tried to stay far longer than I should have, because again, my perception was distorted. Now, keep in mind, I was in my early teens and 20s. So I didn't have the same breadth of knowledge and understanding and wisdom that I do now, but I always like to look at my younger self and look at how unawake I was and how those interactions affected the very environment of my life. Another example that came to mind when I was chopping my jalapenos was when I was young, my parents were divorced, and I had this wound of unworthiness and guilt that I held within my own self from a very young age. I believed I was the reason my father left. Not me per se, but I felt, and I would play the audio tape within my mind of I wasn't good enough as a child. I was not worthy of love. How would my father leave? How would my family break up? And I would ruminate in this as a young person. And because of this distorted perception, and really I was marinating myself in these negative emotions, which can be understood. I'm not saying that at 7 years old, you're supposed to understand how to articulate all of these things. All I'm saying is that I can see from a wider spectrum of how residing continually in these thought forms in my inner world, I created and attracted towards myself a series of really self-actualizing, but like in a negative way. I would reinforce that narrative over and over and over. So I'd go to school for, grade 1, and I'd think, oh, well, nobody's going to hang out with me. Nobody's going to play with me. Nobody's going to like me. These are the kind of things, the thought forms that were going on inside my little head. Well, what do you think happened? Exactly that, because that's what I was projecting. And then as that would reinforce the unworthiness, it would just grow and grow. It was like a mushroom cloud, right? Like it just kept pervading this energy of just not being worthy or enough, so then we tether this back into negative behaviors. things like, okay, well, if I don't think I'm worthy and I'm going to go into a party or social situation, I know if I take a drink, those thoughts and those insecurities are going to go away. So that's a coping mechanism. But remember, I'm allowed to judge everybody else for doing that. But when I do it, I'm just self-soothing. I'm just moving through my own trauma. But this is the thing. When we start to judge others and condemn others, when we really don't know their entire story, all we do is hold bitterness inside of ourselves. Another example that I was thinking about was in terms of my business life cycle. So in the beginning of owning businesses, I used to get very, very angry when other competitors would copy what I was doing, steal my ideas, and I would just, it would just eat me alive. And I would just get so frustrated. Instead of seeing that there is an infinite amount of abundance, and that if somebody was emulating what I was doing, it was kind of a compliment. It meant I was on the right track. Plus, I'm the creator of it. So if I'm this wellspring of all of these great ideas, I'll just create some more, right? So I've gotten to this place within myself where I'm very good at looking at the landscape of my own mental dialogue and diet. What am I feeding myself? What am I feeding my soul, my internal world? Because what I started to realize when I was really focused on what I was internalizing, and therefore, excuse me, sorry, I was eating some spicy spaghetti, but what I was internalizing and then projecting outward was directly related and linked to the experience of my life. So all I had to do was change my internal dialogue, see myself as beautiful, wonderful, worthy of love, and that the world wasn't against me. And all of a sudden, all of these great things started happening, and friends were there and amazing business partners. And so this is what I'm trying to say, is that we really do create our own reality. Now, yes, we're going to run into obstacles and challenges, but when we see the world through this lens, it's just completely different. It's like you are so powerful in the beauty of this internal sovereignty that you've created in divine alignment with this thought pattern that is a matrix of beautiful thoughts. It becomes you. You can't help it. And so this is really the reason why I'm taking the time to teach all of this, because I see people out there that think that they have a mental illness, or think that they're an addict, or think that they're suicidal, or I went through all of those different, maybe I'm this, maybe I'm that, whatever it is. And at the end of the day, none of it calibrated. And I was able to rise above all of it. Even some really severe issues that I had at a certain point with agoraphobia, which is where you are just afraid to leave your house. I went through a cycle in my 20s of this kind of negative, perceptive, just really contracted mental behavior. And it was based in fear. And so, of course, fear being the absolute opposite of unconditional love. But because everything that was in my internal world was so negative, it was just so peppered with negativity, that's all my brain was doing, was cycling through over and over and over all of this what if thinking, this dark thinking, this negative, anxious thinking. And it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. I just became so crippled because of what I was attuning my mind to. And then I realized, once I started to kind of massage through this, meditate, work on different subliminal healing techniques, listening to, what would you call it? Psychological, I'm looking for the word here. Psychotherapy. Basically, I would listen to these things, it would walk you through a nice field, whatever it is. It's not very high level thinking. I wasn't doing a lot of self-reflection. I was basically just trying to calm my mind down at that point. And it worked. my neurological pathways were starting to learn some of this new calm type of thought form energy. And so as that was working, and as I was able to get out in the public, have some fun, go to some parties, the more fun I was having, the more I was expanding, the more, I was feeling happy, the more happiness that was coming, the better my life was getting. Still, of course, in this younger dramatic state, because this is the thing, especially when we are not awakened spiritually, we can see things as very superficial. So there was definitely a point in my life where even my dialogue, the small talk, everything that I did in terms of my interactions was very small. It was childish. It didn't have a depth to it, but they know not what they do. I mean, I didn't know. I had no conceptual base point to even think outside of that box. And that's the whole point I'm trying to make here, is that it's possible that you may be dealing with somebody that's residing in distorted behavior, but they don't have a set point to think beyond where they are. So judging them is a futile activity, because they're just unaware. And so the way that you heal you, because you're only in control of you, is to love them. And loving them doesn't mean that you sit there and love them mentally over and over and over in your head. You just put a stamp on it. Hey, love and light, and then move on to something better, move on to higher ground, go do something positive. That's the same thing with gossip and negativity and cutting people down and jealousy. Okay. I went through it. I was a young girl. I would get jealous of other women. I would get jealous of other situations, frustrated, whatever. And the thing about this is that when you are residing in this negative energy, and when what you're talking about is negative against others and kind of puts them down, and if you're jealous, all you're doing is keeping yourself small. And so that's one of the things that I learned, is that I just stopped having those type of dialogues with other people. The other thing I stopped doing is talking about my problems, because I am the source of my problems. I'm the one that's going over and over and over them, even going to something like a psychologist. I went to a few of them when I was younger. You sit there and you talk about all of the bad things in your life and reinforce all of those bad things in your life. And you come up feeling really shitty about yourself. And what I realized is that the way that you feel good is to just go out and do good things, and to like people, and to engage with people. And the people that are toxic and negative, I'm not going to, brush them with that paintbrush, but I'll move away from them energetically, but love and light, because then I'm holding nothing within myself that is other than love and light. And that's the message here, that it's hard to integrate if you haven't, gone through a lot of dark times and really had to figure out how to get yourself out of those dark times. But it's a process, and it's worth it. And you come out the other side and you have wisdom. You have this beautiful wisdom that is worth it. I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change any of the difficult things that I went through, because the wisdom is so worth it. And that's the journey. That's the point. So when you're looking at somebody else's life, comparing yourself to somebody else's life, and thinking, oh God, they have it all. They may not be lucky enough to have the pressures, because pressure is privilege. Pressure is what molds the diamond. Pressure is what creates the character and the richness of your soul. Okay, I am gonna go chill out, finish my spaghetti dinner, and hopefully see you in the next video. I didn't expect to make this one, but I had to get on here and really talk about some applicable examples.